I like to start these things with a quote. And today I have, if you don't take a personal inventory now and then, you'll repeat the mistake over and over until you take a look. And that's something that Pauline just told me today. And I think it's a fantastic quote for what we're going to talk today. Pauline Hsu is a vice president of marketing with Vanity Inventory, a platform that helps e-commerce brands grow through inventory tracking and efficient operations. She's been part of and led marketing teams with Edelman PR, Macy's, WeddingWire, and most recently spends a lot of time growing startups. Pauline lives in Maryland with her two kids, a parakeet, and many houseplants. Pauline, thank you so much for your time.
Hi, hello, Zivko. Yeah, the quote really, I think, echoes out for me on a couple different reasons. One is clearly, we are an inventory software, but even I'm a big personal growth nerd, and so that's kind of great for me too. Thanks for starting us off with that today.
Fantastic. Now, can you walk me through your journey, your whole kind of process of where you started working with those massive companies? I know you also mentioned that you work with like Manscaped and stuff like that. Can you walk me through your journey? How did that started, and how did you end up where you are today with Final Inventory?
Yeah, so just to kind of TLDR this real quick high level, the big thing was I used to live and work in New York, and then I moved to Maryland. And so when the bio said over 20 years. And so in the beginning, there was no remote work, right? Like nowadays, you're like, oh, you can live a different place, you can work a time zone, 5 time zones away, and it's not a big deal. But like back in the day, you lived where you worked. And so at the time I lived in and around New York City. And so, oh my goodness, like I worked within a 3 block radius of Times Square for like over 12 years, it seems like. And that was where kind of the Edelman and the Macy's came in. First job out of college was Edelman PR. Like I felt so lucky. And from there, it went to Macy's, where I worked for, again, like nearly 10 years at Macy's, split between a couple of different teams, but between Macy's corporate and then also Macy's.com. When my family grew, we relocated to Maryland, and it's been pretty cool. So we've been here for, again, over 11 years. And the like I grew up in the Northeast. And so coming to Mid-Atlantic and DC, it's just such a different world because things are significantly less corporate. And I have just been loving the startup entrepreneurship kind of culture here in the Mid-Atlantic and around DC. Um, yeah, it's very different going big corporation, lots of hierarchy, lots of, corporate procedures, policy. As much as I worked on marketing, I had my lawyer. It was like marketing team, lawyer for like everything we did. And here in the startup world, it's like, what are we gonna do today, guys? Like, what's the hot idea? And so I love it. I love not even just the flexibility, but the creativity and the ingenuity that can come from working in startups. I'm a pretty optimistic person, and it really, aligns with me and that like opportunistic, creative path that startups can take.
Right? And it is a night and day shift from not just from like New York to Maryland, but also from corporate to startups. Did you in that whole journey, did you try to incorporate something from corporate into startups and vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that corporate does have down is kind of like SOPs and structure, right? So I think that startups, while it is kind of like a wake up, you don't know what you're going to do today, as the team grows, you really do need to add some structure to what are you reporting, how you're reporting, what are your metrics, how does it get evaluated, what is your process to roll things out, how do teams interface with each other. When startups are small and they're like 5, 8, maybe 10 people, you can kind of just like casually get things done. But I kind of feel like once you get to the like 12, 15, 20 and higher, for sure 12, 15, you need a way to plan and document. What I've seen at some smaller startups as they grow is that they kind of miss out on the documentation piece, so that you can like replicate your processes over time. When new team members join and teams expand, the ability to A, share the knowledge, and B, kind of build upon it gets into this like fuzzy gray space of like, oh, well, that was Tim. Tim knew that, but Tim's on vacation for a week. So just like wait till he gets back. Like that happens a lot. Or other things like even like tech processes, right? Like, oh yeah, Sally handles that, and like Sally's gotta handle whatever. So I think there's that, but then there's also even forward thinking numbers. When you first start off, I think and I mean, this makes sense. Growing pains, we love growing pains. You look at the first thing ahead of you. So you look at, sure, you look at your sales numbers, right? But then over time, you need to understand like layers deep. And I think that sometimes founders and small businesses don't know where they're going to be in the future, respectfully. And so they're not setting their businesses up early on to be able to learn and grow in the future. And I mean, I think that you kind of understand at what almost like scaling checkpoints there are that you should stop and say, okay, this is what we did before. Is this, ask yourself the question, again, personal growth nerd, ask yourself questions. Is this working? Is this how we intended it? Is this something that we can see continuing on this path? Yes or no? Evaluate and kind of move forward. And again, going back to this quote that we started off on today, if you don't stop and take that personal inventory, if matched with Einstein's quote of, something along the lines of like crazy is defined by doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? If something isn't working for you, but you're not changing what you're doing, then it's going to continue to either like be a problem. I was actually just going to say either be a problem or continue, but I can't even say the continue to be successful path, because in the business world, things are always changing, right? E-commerce changes faster than almost anything these days. And so things that were working for us 6 months ago, a year, 3 years ago, there's no way that same thing is going to continue with the pace of, candidly, like technology in the world.
I think it's I think it's refreshing to hear someone, and that's that New York cutthroat kind of, it is what it is. You got to do this, otherwise, you'll fail. Where in other places, kind of more relaxed, and you have that attitude like, look, if you take the good stuff from the corporate and you apply it into your startup, Mr. SaaS leader, Mrs. SaaS leader, you will see that you need to have SOPs and structure, because before everybody was buddy buddies and we kind of started, everything was cool. But the moment you pass, like you mentioned, 12 to 15 people, it's just a pain for the new person to join this. They want to be part of this collective that you're creating, but now there's no plans, there's no documentation, and there's also no forward thinking numbers. So the team that is already there, they're kind of like, is this a temporary job? Is this something that can grow?
Right.
Will this be the next big thing?
Right.
We have no forward thinking numbers. And I think that sunken fallacy, I think that's what it was called, where you already invested, you're like, no, we're not changing, no, we're not changing, pivot or push, no, we're not changing, and you
Yeah.
keep going through
Yeah.
where 2 3 people are telling you like they're on the outset, this is not going in the right direction, especially in SaaS when things are rapidly changing so much.
Yeah. And
If
that actually, you brought up team there a couple times, and I think that's that mid stage, because once you start having layers of team members, the people who are good at their job, it doesn't mean that they're going to be great managers. And once you have layers, to your point of like how people are working, what they're doing, et cetera, I really think that investing in team management training goes a long way as well, because then that's when like a culture starts developing, if you will, how your team operates, how they work together, that goes a long way. And, as I've, changed jobs, what I have found to be the most important thing is culture. Because especially as marketing, I will do the same thing, generally speaking, from one job to the next, right? I'm going to look at my numbers. I'm going to work with my creative person. I'm going to work on messaging. Like, my tasks are decently similar, but it's really who is the team and what is the company culture that has such an impact on everything else around it. And I think that really focusing on people and developing people becomes critically important in that like mid growth stage.
I've seen that in my company, and I think that was the hardest piece to kind of accept, because you feel like I would put under the bracket of branding. You don't see it. It's there. It's just hard to see it. But then it hits you in your face and you're like, wow, why is this not working? And why is this team not doing this? And why they not, like, if I, God forbid, if I cough and sneeze, I feel like no one's going to be on my side.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
don't develop that
Yeah.
from, you have to develop that from the beginning through team training, team management training.
Exactly. So again, hard skills and soft skills are very different, right? You can interview, and so my stance in interviewing is I always look for how people think because I can teach them anything. The hard skills I can teach, that doesn't matter. But how do you think? How do you approach a problem? What are the techniques that you have to interface with other colleagues, right? Especially in marketing for SaaS, we have to work with product leaders, technical people, and then we have to work with sales and support who all think very differently. So as someone in the middle who has to push out blogs, content, webinars, what have you, how do you work and interface to get the right information, to ask questions, to get on calendars in a way that people kind of understand our goals, but also we understand what they're saying as well, right? So it's that being able to be malleable and work with different types of people, understanding, my sales guy is not going to be the same personality as my dev guy, right? But like, how do we come together in the middle?
And when you're looking at these processes that you've experienced through the past with these like massive brands that are extremely successful and kind of stood the test of time, if you will, what were the best pieces of culture development? What were the ones that you like? I really like that, and I tried to take that with me in everywhere where I went. I tried to take a piece of here, and I tried to apply it in every position that I was.
100%. Sure. So Edelman was just like excellence, excellence across the board, nitty gritty details. I remember going to a client meeting and we knew everything about them personally and just like company history. So it was very much like again, like meticulous levels of detail. We would go to client meetings with like and let's also keep in mind that like budgets were a little higher at some of these companies too, but at Edelman, we would go with like specifically colored and flavored shakes, smoothies to go. We knew like our clients' dog's birthday and like gifted a like really personal color. Like it's all of those little details because again, it resonates in the software world. People buy from people, right? So in terms of account and client management, were we the best bid? Were we the highest bid? That almost doesn't matter. But what matters is that we renewed the contract because of like the people relationships. Macy's relies hard on the brand, right? So I'm sure everyone has read headlines. Macy's is closing stores. Macy's is trying new things. We have a new CEO. I say we as in, like I said, work there, but they have a new CEO. Um, Always trying and testing out new policies. But the thing that really works for Macy's is the brand, right? So no matter what, Macy's will host the Thanksgiving Day parade. No matter what, Macy's will do those fireworks, right? It's being part of the community and kind of getting out with the brand. It's being active. Again, we do like they. I love the volunteer work that happens. There are several days a year. And again, this was like ages ago, before social media, where you like would talk about how great your company is for doing volunteer work. Like they've been sponsoring volunteer days forever. And I really like that piece about giving back. And then I will say at WeddingWire, they are so good at the fail fast philosophy. So try anything you want. Obviously, understand the risks going in, understand how to track and analyze performance quickly, yes or no, but like fail fast. Try it, fail fast, learn from it, move on. Like really good at cycling through projects, things like that. Um, and there were also really good WeddingWire at, even if it was not an intentional test, I would say WeddingWire was really good at being like, wait a second, something is like bubbling up and this is working well. Let's take that and run with it. They were really good at kind of identifying some early leaders for performance across channels, across tactics, across teams. Really good at that.
So they would um they would identify a trend and they would not be afraid to test it, but because they have the years of experience, they know how to tastefully do that as opposed to just kind of kibosh it, like, hey, let's just try this new trend. They would
Yeah.
have that experience, but they will not be afraid to test it, to analyze it, and to see this is a new trend. Let's just run with it. And usually it would work out in their benefit, and they're the first, and that's what they kind of became known for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, you hear of like agile tech teams. They were definitely an agile marketing team and like just business operation, right? So if they saw something working, they'd have the ability to pivot, like sustain current teams, do the work that had to be done, but also be like, okay, let's explore this. Let's dedicate resources.
So if we take kind of like the grand sum of all these experiences, what you were mentioning, yeah, you said like excellence in details and personalized gifts and details, like to know exactly who you're talking with, what they want, what they like, to the deal, like you said, like the color for their dog, or the color of the smoothie they're going to bring to the meeting, and building people a relationship, because that's how the contracts kept getting renewed, because that didn't matter highest, lower bid, or what, it just mattered that the relationship with the people was there, and that's what renewed the contracts. And trying and testing new policies, but heavily investing in the brand when it comes to if someone is whatever specifically they might look for. If it's local, fantastic, or if they can do sponsorships of volunteers or something that is related to the brand, but keep associating with other brands that you want to be affiliated with, and doing heavily, kind of leaning heavily into that. And the failed fast philosophy, where you, again, I think like boldness kind of is what we looked in this last one, where you want to test, you want to analyze, you move forward. Don't be afraid of taking the risk. Look at the new trends, test them, and run with them. And it doesn't just apply if it's in operations, it can be also in marketing. If you see a new trend, try it, test it, fail fast, move forward, and you will get it done a lot better, a lot faster. And this is really good culture building pieces for a startup that all these very successful corporations are already doing it day in, day out, that you've experienced.
Yeah, yeah. And again, even as a startup, we talk about Macy's being a huge brand, like how can you take something like that? But the point really is the networking piece, right? Be one of the people. Talk to like other sellers, talk to your audience, go to conferences where you know they're going to be. Just absorb as much information and like voice of customer as possible as a startup. Because you can't have product market fit if you don't know what the market is looking for, right? And so being able to get all of those perspectives is so, so important. Starting a focus group is great, but you have to understand like who is the audience? Is their feedback relevant, right? All these things. But the more conversations you have, the more you'll know as the intake, but it doubles as a reward on the output side as well, because you've gone to these conferences, you made all these connections, you've talked on LinkedIn, you have your private whatever WhatsApp, you have your Discord chats going on. These things are like everywhere, which is amazing in this day and age. But then it also means that when you're ready to push out your product or your message, you already have those contacts in your pocket and they know you. So it's like, and it can be like a, hey guys, I'm rolling this out. Let me know your thoughts, right? It doesn't have, it's a personal message. It's not a boilerplate PR company is proud to announce like service, enter parentheses, comma, descriptor. Like it's not the corporate thing. It's the, hey, Andrew, remember we talked the last month at whatever conference? Like I have an update, blah. So much better. And the more and even though it starts as a one to many, as an I'm one person and I have many relationships and networks, it's the ripple effect from there, right? Andrew's going to tell Gary, who's going to tell Bob, who's going to tell Susan, who's going to tell Aaron, who's going to tell, right? On and on. And that's really what you need is that network.
And
Yeah.
I was going to ask about it when it comes to building that network. I think you and I are from the different times where people met face to face and stuff like that. Do you see that the new startups, SaaS founders and leaders, more kind of rely heavily on email lists and rely on paid ads and rely on content creation, as opposed to going out to an event, meeting people, building that network, and meeting with them again? Do you feel like there is a huge opportunity that because no
Well,
one is doing that?
I think you're talking about two things. When you talk about like email lists, I think you're talking about marketing to your audience. When you talk about meeting people in person, I think that's the networking. So in terms of networking, I do see that people are taking more of a digital path, but that's okay. Like, yes, there are events and there are still meetups and there are like little local county groups that you can be part of. That's good. But I do think there's a way to get here digitally as well, because there are a variety of different like chat rooms, Facebook groups, a million different Facebook groups out there. I mean, please join Reddit, nonstop feedback on Reddit. Grain of salt, consider the source kind of things happen on Reddit, but still, like, you can still make connections that are valuable in the digital world. I think in order to get value from it, though, it very much is a give and take and a selection. Like, make sure that you're joining communities that are really, you can tell A, are engaged, B, are with people that are the same, I don't know, similar mind space, success space, etc. But it takes work. And so even with my team, I make sure that a part of their week is dedicated to networking. Networking for yourself, networking for the company, networking with our audience, networking whatever, because they think that it's like, oh, it's like, it's not important, right? Like, I got to send out the email, great. But you also need to communicate with the market. And again, is it a partner? Great. Is it one of our buyers? Great. Is it like the other competitor? Follow them, listen to their messaging, right? It's so important to keep the pulse on what's going on, because without it, and I know we kind of started networking and now we're kind of looping around, but without the networking piece, it's really hard, I personally think, to know what's going on, to get ahead, to be in part of conversations. I always say, I don't, have you watched Hamilton, the musical?
I haven't
Oh,
watched.
yeah, you're in Canada. Okay. Anyway, there, for anyone who is in the US who has seen it, this may resonate a little bit more, but there is a line where someone says, I want to be in the room where it happens.
Hmm.
And it's hard to be part of the conversation for purchase or consideration when you can't even be part of the conversation, right? So for people to talk about you, they need to know about you. And for people to know about you, there needs to be some conversation happening all the time.
And that's the key piece. Like the conversation has to be happening. There is like we mentioned, like you don't see it right away, and like you mentioned with your team, like sometimes they're like, I need to send the email. Yeah, you do. Like that's part of the networking, because you will be in that room where things happen, because you've kind of planted all these seeds, and when you're ready to launch the product, then you're ready, just have all these channels, and it just happens and starts to move a lot faster, as opposed to from ground zero now. With
Yeah.
Finale Inventory, you work with a lot of brands, big and small, and you mentioned some successes. You mentioned massive brands like Manscaped and stuff like that. When someone is kind of starting in this space, what I mean starting, like they're already like maybe year one, they figured out how they do like inventory management. They're looking at their brand, they're looking at their product. Um, what are some of the main KPIs that you see that um, startups and SaaS leaders are kind of focusing on, but they're kind of vanity numbers. You're missing the main ones that all these other brands are tracking, important KPIs when it comes to inventory management. But some of the startups and SaaS leaders are kind of focused on the wrong ones because maybe they were kind of misled.
Sure. Yeah. I want to answer the question. I just want to make sure that I'm answering it correctly. Are you talking about the brands themselves, or are you talking about software?
I would say the brands that you work with, what
Okay.
are the KPIs that
Right.
they track that other people kind of miss?
Perfect. Perfect. So I think that when you're a D2C seller, you're always looking at sales. Great. That makes a lot of sense. But as you grow, what becomes almost more important is your margin and profitability. Because you see sales and you're like, cool, 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 cool. But if you're not checks and balancing it up against your costs, then you could literally be like out of house and home because you weren't aware that things are so much more expensive to manage than you're selling. And not keeping an eye on profit margin is how companies go out of business. And it's really why, as Finale Inventory, we are so keen to help people manage their inventory, because that's where a lot of their wallet goes to. Like, yes, you have labor costs. Yes, you have to rent your warehouse, but like, to sell a product, you need to buy a product, and to buy your product, that requires money. And I think that without understanding your profit margins and your costs, your COGS, then you get into just a really slippery slope for growth.
And when it comes to like these profit margins that uh, are basically the key thing that will make or break a company, what attributes the most to it? Is it branding? Is there anything that a SaaS leader can take and say, okay, I know what I can work on to start increasing? Because yeah, you can always renegotiate deals and stuff like with the vendors, but what is another piece they have control through marketing?
Sure.
They can increase the margins.
Sure. So I mean, I'm just going to go on a laundry list right now if you're ready. So what factors into profit margin and costs? Because there's like COGS, and I can explain that. There's also your like cost of business, right? And then there's like labor. So let me just like rattle off a million things and then we can go from there. So it's how much do you buy it per piece from your supplier? What are all the freight, tax, shipment fees, port fees? Great, it's at the port. Now it's how you get it to your warehouse. Cool. Now you're in the warehouse. Now you need to lease, own the warehouse, whatever, the racks. But now you also have staffing costs involved, full-time, part-time, contractors. Then comes HR, right? So with your people management, it's their hourly rates, it's benefits if it goes with that. It's all the other like overhead with your staff. And then on the marketing side, yes, it's your ad budgets, it's your designer, it's the promotional discount that you gave off the product, which is going to also be like a negative hit. It's it's product development costs, it's the packaging, it's the outer box, it's the inner tissue, or like whatever plastic bubbles you got. There's so much that goes into it. And if you're only looking at marketing, people will do a lot of the like return on ad sales, right? Like tacos or however you want to look at it. That's on Amazon. But I think without factoring in everything, you're really missing out. And like, yes, so Finale is really good at calculating COGS, your cost of goods sold. We know what you purchased your supplier the cost at against what did you sell and what was that rate of sale or the value of the sale. So that's good. That's good for like pure product profit margin. But to really get that larger view, you need to funnel all of your costs, all of your sales. We work with QuickBooks Online really well. So we, have sellers feed all of these different variables into QuickBooks Online. But when their accountant, CPA, whoever gets all the other costs in there as well, you can really figure this out. So one of my favorite examples is I actually worked for a brand at one point, and whoever it was, sales product manager, they coined a deal with Sharper Image to sell one of our products. And so at the end of Q4, we're like high-fiving, we're like, cool, nice. We sold like so many units to Sharper Image and it was great, except for when we looked at the promotional discount. So like, yes, we did volume of sales, but because of the discount, we actually sold it at a little bit of a loss. So it was like, oh God. Like we sold a lot because the discount was so good, but no one ever thought about like to check back, how does that fit into our margins?
And that's when, like you mentioned, that's when companies miss out dramatically because they would. I think I've seen it in the past when someone puts like true cost, like, but can you need
Yeah,
to define it properly?
there's so many layers. Yes.
And when you define it properly, what you guys do is you take everything in consideration, down from where you bought it all the way to the HR, like how
Correct.
everything goes into it. And then so you take that one component, and the second component would be the marketing. Of course, like designers and promotions and packages, and how much people you also have allocated for that as well. And then you come up with, all right, that is your cost of goods sold. Now let's see what are our margins. And from there, we started working on sales and what we can and can't do, as opposed to just looking at this is my store, Shopify is doing XYZ sales. Here's a screenshot. It
Yeah.
doesn't show the margins.
Correct. Yeah. And that's always why we're like peeling back the onion on layers of data. It's like, yeah, here are your Shopify sales. Here's a promotional discount that you have applied to it. Great. But like, what else is happening in your organization? Also, what happened with the ad campaign that drove to your Shopify store? How much did you invest in that, which is now eating into some of your margin, right? So how does your Shopify store compare with your Amazon? How does Amazon compare with Walmart? There's like all these different things. And it's a lot of work, which is why, so Finale works with sellers who are basically at that $1 million mark. And then we scale up to like literally 100 million. But getting to that million is a grind because you have to figure out not just how to sell your product, but how to do it kind of resourcefully with a small team, but also keeping in mind the profit. And then once you really get to that million, it's about how to scale profitably. And so from a marketing perspective, I've never been a fan of when people ask like, oh, like, what's your marketing plan? How much is your budget? Like, yeah, I know budget has a play, but I'm not just dumping it into ads because ads aren't scalable. The second that, let's just fake it, Google or Meta change their policies, you're not in control of your ads. It's also a really competitive space. So your bigger competition is going to probably outspend you, which just means it's just this race to spend, right? There's someone on my team who always says like, no one wins except for Google or Meta because they're the ones just like reaping all this money. And it's so true. So for me, when I think of marketing, like the reason why I love a brand play is because that's your brand. You own it, you control it, you tell the story. And if you get it right and it resonates with your audience, then that's where they take it and move it forward. So like a good example of a brand play, it's kind of funny. I'm almost going to give you like a somewhat ironic personal story here, but I do not like I don't like labels, right? If I have clothing, you will never see like a label on it. It's just like not who I am. I don't want to be someone's walking billboard. But if I love your brand, I will totally carry it out. I want your sticker on my water bottle. I want to put something on my laptop because I've bought into not even just you as a brand, but that brand has almost become part of my identity, right? And so once you get there, that's where it gets personal. And that's where people want to, like, again, whether it's a SaaS company or like a tangible consumer product, but that's where they align and that's where you've been successful. And that is not measured in success of KPI, but that's where you get to like repeat sales as a DTC brand, repeat contracts, upgraded contracts, more people on using your software, like whatever it is. It's really how beneficial are you to that person's life, their job, whatever they're doing. That's where you know you've made it.
And it's, I think it sounds like that intensity is what a lot of people don't have when it comes to brand. They think it's just something like secondary where you put a lot of effort into it, you put a lot of intensity into it. Like this is what matters because the brand play is better. The brand play will outlast ad spends. The platforms change and whoever I've talked with, they all say like the ads just keep going higher and higher and higher. The barrier of entry is pretty high. The maintaining and sustaining is pretty high. That's where communities start to become a thing. School and all these Discord channels opening up because that's when the brand is coming into play. And even personal brands, people focus on that as well because that's something like you mentioned you have control over. And if someone is thinking about it or they're like year one and like grinding it, it sounds like what you're feeling the best thing to do is focus on your brand. The ad spend, like you will never, it's not something that is sustainable, but brand focus on it. Maybe you don't see it right now, but you will start to see those repeat purchases and being important in your prospects, in your clients, in your clients' lives, and that's why they will have that personal connection with the brand. And when that happens, everything clicks, and then you won.
And when I say brand, I mean a lot of things. I don't just mean what is your logo and what is your tagline. It's like, what is your total creative package? How do you speak to how do you speak to your audience and about your product? On a SaaS side, it's like, how does that message resonate through with your sales and your support team? Because your marketing can say one thing, but if your team isn't also aligned in like the brand promise, your mission statement, what you guys believe in as a company, and they just start spewing off their own like talk track, like, right, that dissonance is not going to help your customer. Your brand needs to resonate throughout everything. Your blog content, how you go to market across the board. And as a D2C brand, it's the same way. It's your packaging. It's what your packaging is made of. If you're some like earth conscious company, but you send something and it's like full of styrofoam peanuts, your audience is gonna be like, something doesn't make sense here, right? So it's across everything and even your team, you know? I love how Subaru does I think with every car you get to donate a portion of your proceeds, right? Like their audience is so backed in nature and giving back. That is like perfect for them. So really your brand needs to resonate across everything you do.
I think that's a very good a comparison that I didn't think of that way, because you hear the Subaru ads, they were like really cool. They talk about nature, you know, they're funny, they're memorable. And then you also have someone like, and people still don't buy into, for example, Apple saying that we don't ship a charger because it's good for the environment, but you can buy another one with another box. You're like, well, I don't buy into this. Like
Right.
I understand everything else, but this is just not that. And that's what you're saying. Like the message and how you speak to your audience is important. I mean, you can push and drive a message, but if it's not really like naturally kind of resonating, you need to
Yeah.
take into consideration into your brand. And like you mentioned, brand is not just
Yeah.
logo.
Yeah.
It's more of all these things
Uh,
together.
I on LinkedIn, someone recently connected and he's like, hey, like do me a favor, check out my shop. What do you think? And his About Us story was really cool. It had a personal story for why he created these basically supplements. Um, and then he was talking about the different people who would benefit from it. Great. And then you go to the product page and everything was just white. White store, white label. The product image was just the bottle with like the label facing outward. That's it. And I was like, you're trying to sell a wellness lifestyle brand. You need lifestyle photos. You need to talk about wellness. You need to have like quotes from real people who look like, the people you're expecting to buy. It looked almost like an FDA scientific, very stark, and like if you want to be pushing that medical angle, great, but then embrace it. Have doctors, have like scientific research studies. It was just like, here's a product. It is good for this reason. Ingredients are blah, label. And I was like, get a little like life breathing into your product,
Yeah.
So the brand really goes a long way.
Right. Yes, absolutely true. We usually get to this point where we know what works, and we see the stuff that we should implement because maybe some of the information we kind of didn't have, and listening to someone like you has all this experience and walking through these companies and being part of these teams, it's really enlightening to understand a lot of the stuff that we kind of don't really know and what we should focus and what we should work more towards. But as things kind of, like you said, in especially in e-commerce, things change so fast in 6 months and 3 months. We're now at the point where every conversation there is a space for AI because it became a thing. It became a thing
Yes.
that
Yes.
everybody is battling with it in a positive way. Where do I use it? How do I use it? I don't want to not use it, but I don't see all the benefits. Everything that was promised is not right
Yes.
here. But some
Yes.
things are here, and I'm trying with this. Do I put more? So my question here is, how do you see AI playing into what you guys do every day?
Sure. Sure. Um, Here's what I will say. I think that for us as well as companies out there, you're either you're either an early adopter or you're not, right? If you're an early adopter, my guess is you've already jumped in and you're like leveraging 5 different tools. So for everyone else, I kind of think it comes down to like a crawl, walk, run, right? So approach AI and just like throw a couple. First of all, there's a variety of tools.
Yeah.
Figure out where you want to start. And I'll just take Chat GPT because it's the easiest one. Um, and I'm always trying to split this into a couple things, whether you're marketing or your brand, there's a couple different things we can do. I will say in our company, we use AI in a variety of different ways. For our marketing, it's always used as a thought starter, right? And especially because we're a remote company, we can't always brainstorm as a team.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I often like will like have pretty decently long chat conversation with ChatGPT, just like working out my thoughts. What about this? What's this angle? Blah, 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 just to kind of like cement where I should go. And then once I feel comfortable, I'm like, cool, great. And then like, I got it. Or, some of our new hires will put out like, before they really know content, they'll ask for a template and then we work on it together to build in the main content. Images go a long way, right? If you have an image, touch it up. If you need some creative inspiration before you actually design it, go there. That's kind of the crawl perspective. The run is, I think that there are ways to incorporate, again, some of those like optimization layers. We're doing this. How should we be doing this? Here's a data set. Can you go and like analyze, pull out higher level thinking, summarize findings for me, look at this report, export, yada, yada, and crawl, walk. And I missed walk, sorry, but that was walk. The run is really kind of the integration into systems. And I think that once you can integrate AI into your tool, then it's a whole other level, right? So it's not asking it to take a look at it. It just knows, hey, I found this data and here's what we should know from it. And I think that's where the value of AI comes in, is eliminating steps and eliminating guesswork from what you're doing. I will also say from a content perspective, I think marketing teams need to be very, very careful because, Google is getting smarter at identifying content, and especially with their algorithms that prioritize relevance and uniqueness and quality content, AI content, no questions asked. You can always pick out AI content by reading the first like couple lines, looking at the structure of content. It's so standardized that they know. And I think that, the dings are starting to come from that.
Right.
And from AI, the same thing goes. Like, how can you write your product descriptions, right? Can you talk to it and then it spits out like a more marketing friendly product description? Can you give it your product photos and help ask it to touch it up? Can you help? We talked about brand before. Can you help feed in your brand mission, your mission statement, your whatever, and help craft that customer service message, things like that?
I think those are some of those like the breakdown that you had. I think that's fantastic because everybody just wants to go at the run part, kind of
Yeah.
integrate it fully right away,
Yeah.
as opposed to look, kind of start in the crawl, thought starter, just plan some things, see what it, because at least my experience is like prompt engineering. All I'm doing is
Oh my
trying to
gosh.
figure
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
how do I prompt this thing, and I think this is where people are like, no, doesn't work, and it's dumb and blah, and that's not the point. It's like it's a tool. You need to tweak and you need to change it. And probably this is the worst it will ever be. So probably in a couple of years, it's going to be 10 times better because we did this in Google as well. In the search, it wasn't
100,
so good. We would do all these crazy stuff to get a proper search. And
100%.
I think that's where people kind of drop off in that prompt engineering process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to kind of dip your toes in AI. And I think that people are hesitant for a couple different reasons, like from just, I don't know, to like the robots will take over one day. So depending on where you stand there, but I think once you start to play with it, you really understand the power of how helpful it is. The other thing I have to tell people is that I hate to say this, like, but everyone's doing AI in some way, shape, or form. And that if you're not, then you're behind. What does that mean? It means that people are working either smarter and or faster than you with the help of AI. And if you're not leveraging it even just a little bit, you're already behind. So that goes with any tool or resource, but I have to say that I think the AI bit is growing a little bit faster than some other SaaS or technology.
And I think it's if you use it in the right way. For example, back in the day, if you wanted to change the background of your product, you need to go to the designer. They need to like line it out, and now you can just
Right.
be like, there you go, take out the background, like stuff like
Right.
that, or like here's my face, put a suit and put a t-shirt
Yeah.
and put me now in New York.
Yep.
That was like a full size kind of
Correct.
task. It wasn't so simple, and these are the things that I think kind of that's what is meant to be used, but people push it and they're like,
Yep.
oh, well, no, of course, yeah, the hands look weird, but you would have a graphic designer to do that for you. It's just those small touch-ups on an image, for example, or when it comes to if you don't have a content planner, you can go to AI and can say, give me a content planner similar to XYZ company or something that would, it will give you the starting, but definitely not it, but it's a good starting point because you had no idea before.
100%.
And
Exactly.
you can spend hours searching and downloading templates or condense that into a couple of prompts.
Correct. That's where it always starts for us because, ask any writer and they know that the first like sentence is the hardest, right? Once you get in your groove and you get the feel and you know the content, you're good. But that's what AI does, especially for me, like I was saying before, it helps me get my first thoughts just down, even if it's not what I'm going with. It just helps me to be like, okay, where should I start thinking about this? And then I go from there and make it my own.
And I like your approach. Like I said, crawl, walk, and run. I think that's a very good approach that someone should take as opposed to just talk about the running part or just because they got stuck on the prompting first thing.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of opportunities, and you're absolutely right. Everybody's using it. I even had like Sebastian, who's a lawyer. He's like, we should be able to kind of use it in a template, but I can't feed it the information, but it can summarize 50 pages of this and this, summarize it to some degree, and I can use maybe something of that, and then we can kind of go from there. The things like that are important, but it's not the final product. That's
correct. I absolutely use it for some legal assistance, just FYI. But the other thing I want to say, I think it's interesting you talk about the prompts because we're starting to see, this is going to sound funny, but for some of our marketing team members, when we were hiring, that a skill now is being listed as like Googling, which sounds funny, but it actually makes a big difference because that's how like we have found that people know how to help themselves. And I can almost see this being another thing, like chat prompt, AI chat prompt skill, because it's being able to take something, leverage it, start somewhere, grow from there, right? Like, what are the tools? How are you using your resources to help you move something forward?
it's fantastic. And I think it's the Googling part. It will take me some time to get used to that. That's a skill, but the prompt engineering, it's definitely one of the podcasts we did with Scott. His whole team is like, we just do AI prompt analysis. That's what I call it because we're just testing the most popular ones and trying to find new ones because that's what we see. The output is like 10 times better because we will
Yes.
understand how to use them basically.
Yes.
Now, once you have all this kind of come into play, you have the AI, you have the team, you have the products, you have all these things, and you kind of mentioned that you're heaving into personal growth and you really like that aspect of the whole thing. What are some of the main things that you've learned through this career that that you got to this point that you would say like final things? This is what I would say someone should definitely take and apply in their life as personal growth if you really want to succeed for the long run.
Easy. Professionally and personally is always keep learning. I think that was the biggest thing. I thought like when I remember graduating college, I'm like, I know it all. I'm great, like all good. And then as we've talked about, the world changes, you get different perspectives. And once I started kind of getting into a mindset where I need to always be learning, I definitely hit a little bit of a lull. Like I wasn't progressing in my career as much as I wanted to. And I felt like stuck, which made sense because I was stuck in my ways of doing it the one way that I had learned. And then kind of learning, talking, absorbing information is really how you expand your horizons, both like professionally and personally. And that was really, I think, the catalyst for probably like my best moments, both in life and on the job.
It's amazing. Always be learning. Pauline, if people want to get a hold of you, how did they do that?
Great. So Pauline Hsu on LinkedIn. I'll have a good LinkedIn connect. And also for Finale, if there are any e-com, brick and mortar, omni-channel, what have you, resellers, sellers or brands out there, it is finaleinventory.com. And we are named Finale because we started as a fireworks company. So Finale as in grand finale. So it's FINALE inventory.com. We have an amazing US-based team who can help sellers through a variety of different, we often talk to sellers and they have these custom unique needs and Finale is able to help solve a lot of them. So, encourage anyone out there to talk to our team at Finale.
Absolutely. And I would encourage everybody to talk to Pauline. Fantastic person. Pauline, thank you so much for this time. I learned a lot. Wish you all the success.
Cheers. Thanks. Same to you. It was fun to have a chat today.